Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. I'm in the process of going around the garden, digging up hellebores. Not because I don't want them, but I want to move them to the new woodland garden. And now is a good time to do that. This has been here, I suppose, about 10 years. And the roots are really established. And the ground is really dry and hard. So it's quite a caper, but it does show you what hellebores can do and why they're so long-lived, because a hellebore can live for decades, and they establish this big root system that goes quite deep, but it makes moving them a little tricky. There you are. What are you doing? This is not helpful. If I put it on the wheelbarrow, that will flummox you. What are you going to do? Disaster. I know, okay. Well, there you go. It's like a tooth coming out. Okay, we got it. We're ready to go. And coming up on today's programme, Ashley visits RHS Hyde Hall in Essex, where they are experimenting with growing plants that thrive in hot, dry conditions.
Here's something you don't see every day in a UK garden, a prickly pear. This one was planted about 3 years ago, and it's an experiment by the team here to see how it would do, and it's thriving.
We meet a designer whose love for bright colours bursts out of every border.
I see my garden as an explosion of colour. I want it full on. I want it fireworks. I want it zingy and zesty.
Adam celebrates ornamental grasses and explains how they can bring height, movement and texture to any garden.
This is a great little spot just to talk about what the different species bring to the party when you're designing and playing. Every single one of these plants will hold form right through the winter months.
And we pay a visit to a gardener who's taken her love of Japanese maples to a whole other level.
The garden is influenced by the gardens of Japan, and I grow a lot of acers. There's over 70 in this garden.
Now, this area has been for the last 30 years part of the copse, but it wasn't working for a number of reasons, so we made big changes, and I've transformed it into a woodland garden, which is sort of the same thing, but some important differences. When you're creating a woodland garden, what you've got to do is find plants that are adapted to the conditions, which are quite specific. You have almost no shade in winter and early spring. And then, of course, the shade grows as the surrounding trees put on leaves and it gets drier. And by midsummer, it's dense shade. So what I'm planning to do here, and I've started with the shrubs, is have some spring colour, and then gradually, as we move into summer, green will take over. Now, hellebores slightly span both because, of course, the foliage you can see here, even in autumn, is still looking good. So they provide that green that I want from their leathery leaves, which grow, by the way, after the flowers, but it's the flowers you grow them for. Now, this one is a double one, multi-petaled, white flowers, really profuse. And I think it will be great right there. You can see, poor things, how dry they are, but I want to group them together. I'm going to put that there like that. On the wooden floor, plants tend to grow in drifts or groups, so that's what I'm going to do here. Now, the drifts don't have to be huge, but you need to get this sense of plants finding their way along the woodland floor and accumulating over the years, and it's the same with the hellebores. So we'll pop that there. Now, I've also bought a box of these, which I have to say have been delivered in the best packaging I have ever seen. charming little woolen socks. And of course, it's not just sweet, it's really practical. Because you could plant it in the sock, just pop it in the ground. The roots would grow through, the sock would biodegrade, and it would work perfectly well. Or you could take it out of the sock and put that on the compost heap and then plant it if the roots will hold together. These are cultivars bred specifically for certain characteristics. They're from the Harvington yellow group. They're fundamentally yellow with touches of white, and I think they have the subtlety that is absolutely right for this kind of situation. One of the things that if you grow hellebores you'll find is that they seed themselves and they will pop up in unlikely places, but they have a tendency to hybridize. And there is just as much chance of the worst of both parents' qualities as the best being reproduced in the offspring. So when you buy hellebores, you need to see them in flower. Start well, and the chances are that the dominant genes of the parent will be reproduced, but you can't guarantee it. So I'm buying fresh stock to give fresh impetus of these delicate colours that I want here in this part of the garden. Right, let's do the biggest first. So I'm going to move that out the way and dig the hole there. If you want to divide hellebores, probably the best time to do it is after they've flowered in late spring. Now, of course, that will need a good soak, but I will plant everything and then water everything at the same time. So that's the first. Let's get this little one next to it. Now you can see the leaf has broken off there, but that's not a disaster because as long as you've got the shoot, that shoot there, and we've got another one there, there's another one there, and I always remove all the leaves before flowering, and that gets rid of the risk of hellebore blight. I've got one last batch of hellebores, which I absolutely love, and are one of the only two native ones to this country. And this is Hellebores foetidus, and it produces flowers which are green and are tipped with red, and absolutely right for this kind of planting. Sorry, Ned. Now, I placed these in little groups. They will spread. And one of the features of these is, there's a clue in the name, foetidus, because they smell. Now, I quite like the smell. It's slightly foxy, slightly rank, but in a good way, if you know what I mean. And the final fact about Hellebores foetidus, which is a gem, is that the seeds are spread by snails. They get stuck in the snail's slime and then spread out. These are small plants. They will grow about 2-3 foot tall. Now, this garden is embryonic. It's existing in my head, but it won't look like the image that I see in my mind's eye for, I guess, another 2 or 3 years. But that's fine. That's the fun of making a garden. But Ashley, towards the end of the summer, went to visit one of the RHS's more established gardens.
This is RHS Garden Hyde Hall, a place of peace and tranquility. It has a diverse range of garden styles from the traditional to the modern and spadefuls of planting inspiration. I can't wait to explore. The garden has been welcoming visitors since 1993. Its location in one of the hottest and driest parts of the country means it has to regularly cope with extreme climatic conditions, so the team have to choose plants that will survive. This is the dry garden and it was completed in 2001. It showcases plants that are drought tolerant and thrive in areas with very little rainfall. From South Africa to Australia to the Mediterranean, this garden has it all. Over 800 tons of crushed concrete were brought to site to create this mound and provide drainage for the plants. 250 tons of boulders were brought here, and that helps to knit the garden together. Some of the biggest boulders in this garden, like this one behind me, weigh over 5 tons, and I think it helps to create a really established look. The dry garden has more than 400 species, and apart from when the plants are first planted here, it doesn't get watered. Even after one of the driest summers on record, it's bursting with colour and variety. Here's something you don't see every day in a UK garden, a prickly pear, a puntia, and these are actually from Mexico and the southern states of America. They have really spiny pads, and they also produce fruit, which tastes a bit like watermelon and come in reds and yellows. This one was planted about 3 years ago, and it's an experiment by the team here to see how it would do, and it's thriving. It loves the sharp drainage, the southern aspect, and this boulder, which acts like a storage heater. It just goes to show what you can do if you push the limits of gardening. I've always loved Nymphophea, or red hot pokers, because they look so otherworldly, but they're actually from South Africa. And this is Nymphophea coalescens. It has this incredible two-tone colour, this muted coral, and the flowers open to yellow. It's a plant that kind of went out of fashion for a while, but they are becoming more popular because they are so resilient. It's an evergreen Nymphophea. It has these strap-like leaves, which help to retain moisture. It has thick, fleshy stems, and the roots go really deep so they can get that moisture that's locked into the soil. They're a spreading plant, so you do need to give them quite a lot of room, but you can dig up and divide them and give them to your family and friends. They're definitely worth a place in your border. One of the major features of this garden is seed heads and seed pods, and there's lots of different grasses and perennials that I'm familiar with, but this one caught my eye because I've never seen it before. It's a brassica called Fabigia clypeata, or Roman shield, which is a lot easier to pronounce. It has these incredible translucent seed pods that really capture the light. And not only that, but it produces a rustling sound as the wind blows, which I just love. It's definitely one I would love to have in my own garden. We've come from the dry garden, which is very loose and frothy in its planting, and now I'm in a very formal part of the garden, the rose garden, and you can see the hedges form a really great frame for these beautiful roses. And I'm drawn to this one, Lady of Shalott, because it's my favourite colour, orange, but it also packs a really powerful scent. It's delicious. It's like that really old-fashioned tea rose. I love it. While the formal areas of the rose garden are thriving, one of the original features is getting a makeover, overseen by garden manager Ian Ball. Ian, we're still in the rose garden, but there's not actually many roses in this area. What's happening?
Well, we're in our new rose rope walk, so this was a kind of iconic part of Hyde Hall. The original creators of Hyde Hall developed back in the 1950s and 1960s. There were little wooden frames, swags of rope with climbing and rambling roses. And well, everything's got its kind of natural lifespan, and the roses were kind of holding the wooden frames up, and they were kind of collapsing. So it was time to have a bit of rejuvenation and create something new. So this is a modern interpretation, hopefully, of the original one. So we've gone for these metal cylinders that we're going to train our roses around,
and then we've got metal rope between those metal frames.
At the moment, it's completely planted with marigolds. What are those all about?
The marigolds are really part of our multi-pronged attack, really, if you like, on trying to help reduce the effects of rose replant or rose sickness, which is not a well-defined condition, but in essence, if you put a rose back in where a rose was going previously, it may struggle to get going. Probably the leaves will look a little bit yellow, probably not putting on any extension growth. So one option is to actually change your soil, but that's a big job, maybe not particularly environmentally friendly. The other option is to really try and improve the soil. So the marigolds, they have little nodules on their roots, and they are actually kind of attracting some of those pathogens and, if you like, nasties that have built up over the years. So they're hopefully, in effect, cleaning the soil. They've actually given us good colour during the summer months. They've looked really good, but they're hopefully having a positive effect on the soil health.
And once the marigolds have done their job and you've taken them out, what varieties are you thinking to put into the beds?
So as with the original one, we're doing a mixture of climbing and rambling roses. Obviously thinking about the climate going forward, it's tending to be hotter, drier, particularly in our summers down here in the southeast. So we're trying to do a lot of research into what roses are tough, what their pest and disease resistance is like, how free-flowering are they flexible to train, and then also we'll add in some of our old favourites. One called Malvern Hills, which is a good kind of rambler, actually an English rambler. It's got a small lemon yellow flower, which is good. A rose called Cecil Brunner that we have grown for a number of years. Actually, it's got a little delicate pale pink flower, quite a nice flexible stem, so it trains in very well as well. And we're not really going to know until, you know, a year or two down the line whether they've actually helped, whether the new roses do get going, so it is a bit of a kind of live experiment.
Fantastic. What a great experiment to be a part of. I can't wait to come back and have a look and see how it turns out.
I've loved exploring the garden here, and it's amazing to see how the team are pushing the boundaries in all areas to give plants the best chance of success.
I do think that the Hyde Hall dry garden has been a complete success, and it is staggering to think that it hasn't been watered for 25 years. I mean, we don't water the borders here at Longmeadow, but we have lots of rain, and I know they have one of the lowest rainfalls in the country. It does show it's a leading light on how we've got to tackle climate change, and it's going to affect us all, one way or t'other. Luckily, despite the drought this summer, the vegetables sort of came through, but I confess I did water vegetables a bit. However, the effect of the summer is visible now in the chard. Chard is one of my absolute favourite vegetables, always grow it, but what this has done is bolted. But unlike, say, lettuce, chard is still edible when it bolts. The taste is still good, and it regrows even if you cut it right back to the ground, right through winter. So, what I'm going to do at this stage is cut this back. 2 tips when you're harvesting chard. Either take individual leaves or cut the whole thing low, and don't leave half the plant on. If you're going to cut low and cut it all. Right, moving on. I've got a bed of beetroot here, and I'm inordinately proud of it because for the first time I tried an experiment of underplanting my sweet corn with beetroot. Normally I'll do it with French beans or lettuce, something that I will harvest either simultaneously or very soon afterwards. But of course the beetroot is really a winter crop, and having lifted the sweet corn, it's now looking really good. It's a variety called Burpee's Golden. Very sweet, very delicious. And for harvesting them, I just lift them gently like that, and you can see they come out, and they are this beautiful sort of glowing orangey golden colour. Very sweet. And the great thing about beetroot is that the leaves are good to eat, and even if you have a really cold winter and the beetroot seems to rot, and sometimes they can be disgusting, all gloopy on the inside, and you think that's a disaster, actually it will regrow perfectly good leaves, and in spring they are delicious as part of a salad. So it's just win-win. Okay, let's take a couple of these. Now last but actually not least by my lights, because I love them, is this chicory. This is a red chicory, which comes under the broad bracket of radicchio. And this is a variety called Rosso di Treviso. And like all chicories, in summer, it grows with a sort of profusion of green leaves, which are completely inedible. But what they're doing is forming the root from which the red leaves, which are inside the green ones, appear. So you gradually remove the green and you're left with the edible part, which is the center. And it's a slightly bitter taste, but I love it. And to me, it's a key winter ingredient. And of course, it makes a wonderful salad, but also you can cook it. One of the best pizzas I've ever had in my life was a radicchio pizza. Sounds weird, but it was delicious. So we'll just take one and you cut it from the base, and if you do it like this, you will get regrowth from that base. It won't make the same firm heart, but the leaves will be completely delicious, just a little bit looser. And if you're really lucky, you can get a secondary growth in spring. But this first cut, they're not so bitter. And they're absolutely delicious. I love them. And they look great too. Okay, let's add that to the mix. Good boy, come on. It's really interesting because these helianthus have become really dominant at the moment in the Jewel Garden. And I confess I forget which variety it is. But when we dug up everything in the Jewel Garden last winter, I split it into about 6 different plots, replanted it this spring, and didn't think too much about it. But it's regrown with extra vigor, which of course all herbaceous perennials will do when you divide them. And it's loved this very hot, dry summer. And also because, along with the tithonias and the salvias and the dahlias, these are short day plants. Now, the difference in a short day plant and a long day plant. Long day plant, the growth is affected more by light and the lengthening days than heat. Whereas short day plants, which come from nearer the equator, where the light is much more constant, are affected more by heat. And we haven't yet had a frost here at Longmeadow. So even though the days are getting much shorter, it doesn't mind at all. Until the first frost comes, these are blazing with colour. Now, we went to visit a garden where colour was the driving force behind everything.
I see my garden as an explosion of colour. I want it full on. I wanted fireworks. I want it zingy and zesty and vibrant and strong. It brings joy, it brings happiness, and I try to have something happening year-round. My name is Yanis, and I'm a planting designer. I was born in Latvia, and this is my garden in Woking, Surrey. Colour brings the garden alive. It gives so many extra dimensions. To get succession of colour in the garden, it requires quite a lot of research in plants. So what flowers at the same time, what happens earlier, what happens later, but creating colour throughout the seasons is important to me. So whenever possible, I will use and go for and choose bright and vibrant colours, but as the seasons progress, end of summer going into autumn, it sort of turns to be quite autumnal. So this Imperator Red Baron is sort of sets the tone for what's to happen later in the autumn as well, when this Sedum Autumn Joy will turn from white to very dark, rich autumnal red. Somewhere in between, the darkness of these Rudbeckias links it all together, and you sort of create a contrast between the bright colours that pop and then something slightly darker that contrast with the rest and let it stand out. The garden I remember from my childhood was created by my dad, and it's somehow embedded somewhere in my memories. This is the little rose corner that I've created, and I only realized it later in my life that this is in memory of my dad, because this is where it all started years and years ago from my childhood. This is one of the areas which keeps the succession of the color going. So this comes to its best in June, and then it is very important to deadhead to keep the color going. Once the roses are past their best, I bring in some pots with summer color as well, just to keep and brighten up this corner. This little corner of my garden is influenced by my travels from Asia, Singapore, Sri Lanka. So there are some cannas, the Musabas Jew, banana, some gingers in the background there as well. Cannas are absolutely beautiful. They tick quite a few boxes. They are unusual. They are strong, punchy, vibrant colors, and they're rewarding, I think. One little tip: you don't deadhead cannas. You only pull out the sort of spent petals on them, because one stem will bring up few flower spikes. If you enjoy tropical planting schemes and exotic planting schemes, cannas is one of those absolutely essential plants to have. They create little fireworks in your garden. I was fortunate enough to have an employment and work at RHS Wisley, which was an excellent learning opportunity. Somehow I realized that exactly planting design is what is the closest to my heart. I take a plant and I look at it and I think, well, what would go well together with it? This is an example of a color wheel, which I usually follow and which sets sort of the base of my designs. You can see the three primary colors here, which is blue, red and yellow. And then you add some secondary colors, which are the purple, orange with this begonia, and green. And then that makes the colors stand out. Red and blue are next to each other on the color wheel, and in between, as a secondary color, is the purple. And that combination works together very well. And these combinations, and playing with them and combining them, is how I create colors in my garden. This is the green and the lushness. This is panicum sprinkles. Last year I had it in the borders as well, because I believe it gives this lushness and it lifts all the colors in between. But it can be vigorous and it can take over. So you need a bit of maintenance in controlling it. Once it grows, a good idea is to sort of bunch and strap it together, because later on it tends to flop and fall over all other plants. By having green and lushness in your borders, it sort of elevates the colors and at the same time reduces the busyness in the borders that sometimes the color on its own can create. Life is not interesting enough, and life is a bit boring, in my opinion, with pastels. They might creep in at some point later on, but not just yet. It's all about strong, vibrant colors at the moment. Live the moment. Come on.
Well, I too love bright colour, and the Jewel Garden is all about intense colour. But it's a shame not to enjoy all the subtlety and beauty of pastels. You can do both, I think. This time of year is the perfect time to prune climbing roses, but I know that that's something that can seem very daunting. This is a rose called Madame Alfred Carrière, and you can see that it's grown hugely. But if you're systematic and you know what you're trying to achieve, it's actually not that difficult. Let me show you. Climbing roses produce all their flowers on new growth. So what it means is everything you can see will not carry any flowers next year. So all this can go as long as there is a framework from which side shoots grow, and those are the ones that carry the flowers. So go right back down, and we'll take this off. Now, if you're worried about cutting too much, this is 1 year's growth, and by year, I mean, it started to grow in April and was this length by September. So you're looking at sort of 3-4 months growth. Incredibly vigorous, and you need to cut back hard. Now, straight away, we're beginning to see structure. What you're looking for is a framework of about 5 or 6 diagonal main branches. There's a sweet little nest here. I hope it raised a brood. This is where I've been cutting in previous years. Now, all that vigorous vertical growth I'm removing because the weight of it would arch it down, and that would stop the sun getting to the bottom, so you'd have no flowers against the wall. You'd have masses of flowers at the top, but you wouldn't be able to see them, and the whole thing just loses its shape and loses its structure. If you want a rose to scramble free, then you're much better off choosing a rambler. The difference between a rambler and a climber is that ramblers flower on the previous season's growth. So if you prune them now, there will be very, very few flowers. Now, what you want to cut back to is a bud. It can just look like a slight crease in the green stem, and it will grow a shoot from these points. And if you don't, you have a section that is never going to produce any new growth and tends to die back. And you're inviting virus and diseases to come in. So a nice clean cut just above a bud. So, for example, here, I've got a bud there. I can just cut like that, and that can come out. Now, you also occasionally need to replace some of the main branches. Now, this is an older growth. I'm going to take this off. Right. So, get behind there. Okay, hopefully that will do the job. Easy peasy. Now, this comes out. You can see it's got very knobbly growth, massive shoots. What you really want is nice, long, clean shoots with lots of side shoots regularly spaced along it. That's the ideal. That leaves a space there, and then this one can be tied in. Having cut back, it's really important to tie in because everything wants to be secured against the worst of winter weather. With any woody shrub, but particularly with roses, horizontal growth encourages lots of side shoots. Therefore, once the rose is big enough to fill the area you want practically no vertical growth at all. You want it to be as horizontal as possible. This is a job that I like to do in October or November, but actually you can do it any time you like between October and even the end of March. Now, we're going to join Adam, who has gone to visit a garden that's full of lovely things, but he is really focusing on grasses.
I'm going to put my head above the parapet today. I love grasses. And I can't imagine a planting scheme without them. There you go, I've said it. Chances are you might not agree, but stay with me. because this garden, created by Judy Pierce, could change your mind. I think back to probably over 30 years when I first started planting grasses with Jeff Hamilton, which, funny enough, was about the same time this garden was created. Grasses really do bring, I think, something quite magical to our gardens. So today, I want to talk about the array, the size, but most importantly, how to design and play with them. This is a great little spot just to talk about what the different species bring to the party when you're designing and playing. Every single one of these plants will hold form right through the winter months. And I'm looking now at that Calamagrostis, and straight away you can see it's a strong vertical plant. Carries its foliage further up those flowering stems, and it's really, really vertical, gets up to about 6 foot, reasonably see-through, so maybe really lovely, so sort of mid-border. Whereas behind me there, the Miscanthus, they're heavy blocks, really good form, so for me that would sit at the back of the border. And then look here, you've got a Molinia, which is called Sky Racer, but straight away what jumps out is the foliage is really low. And then those stems with that feathery finish sit high, nearly 6 foot, but you can see through them. So that works well at the front of a border because it makes you engage. And the last one is down the front there, and it's Deschampsia. And for me, that feels like clouds. It's fluffy, soft. So for me, I love to rhythm that through a border and use it more than one place. And you can use that airiness to bring a touch of lightness to a bold, colourful border. Grass is a fantastic way of just breaking up space. So here, this Nacella is just an individual highlight. If you want to start to build on that, you then drop over the other side of the path, there's a bigger block. Straight away, that's giving you this idea of rhythm as it's moving down through the border. But then you can see some of the herbaceous perennials just starting to pop up through. Eupatoriums. Over here we've got verbenas, we've got the Russian sage, we've got echinaceas. So you're balancing that grass planting with the flower. Even without much room, you can create memorable, billowy combinations that gently float about in the space you've got. You're looking at this if you haven't got a lot of space. You've got that Rebecca. Everything else is built around. The wonderful flatness of the yellow flowers with these black buttons. And then you've got the Stipa gigantea that's coming up through, and it's got its beautiful oat heads. And then all the way around here is Deschampsia, so it's soft and it's fluffy. You literally could do that in containers outside the back door. So many of these grasses are easy to propagate from seed. Really simply, all I'm going to do is run my fingers through there like a comb, and you will see the seeds just start appearing. So we're going to sow these seeds, and all we're doing now is working in peat-free compost. I've got rid of most of the lumps. And the next thing is to give that a good soaking. Just break them up and just sparsely work them across this surface. There you go. Give them just a really light covering. Could do it with some grit, maybe some vermiculite. So once they're done, leave it in the greenhouse probably for about 3 or 4 weeks. If nothing happens, don't panic. Put it outside for the winter, probably back against a sheltered wall so it doesn't get too wet. Leave it for the winter, then maybe bring it back in. You'll find that they'll start to germinate. I think lastly, it's looking at the bigger, bolder grasses. The miscanthus at the back there, big clump, screen beautifully. And then here, slightly small miscanthus, but as a backdrop, things like the echinacea really show them off and bring them alive. So it really is thinking about grasses as maybe not the stars in the garden, but the plants that bring others alive. Go on, give a grass a go. Might change your border, could change your life.
I think grasses can be the star of the show. They work beautifully with other plants, but some of them are equally beautiful in their own right. And I certainly intend to add some here in the woodland garden. But before I start placing grasses, I'm just putting sticks down to mark the spot where I'm going to put some clipped evergreens. However, I need to mark them now so I allow room for them to grow. And what that means is the space around them I won't plant. This is a grass I've chosen because it'll do well in the semi-shade of woodland. In fact, it does well almost anywhere. It's hyacinth, and it's become really popular in the last 10 years, and rightly so. It's not very tall, and it spills and it flops, and it makes a really good plant in the front of a border because it softens the edges. My plan is to fill an area something like this with a solid block of grasses spilling over. And the total finish height will be not much bigger than they are now, standing in the pot. I've got some more hyacinth. Now, despite the fact that these are uniformly green, this is a variety called all gold. And in full sun, the leaves will turn gold. I want them to be just sort of tinged with gold or yellow. So I'm putting them in quite a shady place. So, let's get these in the ground. And these are tough plants. These are plants that really don't need any special treatment. Basically, make a hole, stick them in it, give them a good watering, and they'll be fine. Just break the roots up a little bit, because then they will regrow from the point that they're broken out into the soil. Conventional wisdom is the best time to plant grasses is late spring, when the ground warms up. But with climate change and with the sort of droughts we're having, I think autumn planting is the way ahead. If you want a massed effect, plant small and then they grow into each other, and you achieve that much sooner. This will run underground and spread. So hopefully this is the beginning of a mat, really, rather than a block. Now, one plant which I've never really had much success with whenever I've planted them and wherever I've put them here in the garden, are acers. I love them, they're beautiful, but I don't think they love me or Longmeadow. However, we went to visit Joan Neyman's garden in Buckinghamshire, and she certainly does have success with acers.
The garden is influenced by the gardens of Japan, and I grow a lot of acers. There's over 70 in this garden. I bought the first one in 2004, and I thought, oh, I like this tree, and yeah, the rest followed. I don't go looking for acers. They come looking for me, yes. Hello, I'm Jo. I was born in Romania, and this is my first garden. We came here 21 years ago, and it was a blank slate. This is the area of the garden closest to the house. There's 7 acers in this area, some of them looking really good at the moment. We have Acer palmatum orangeola, which is a dissectum maple, red in summer, and then in autumn it changes color to a different shade of red. Dissectum means the leaves are very fine and divided. That's Acer palmatum benitsukasa, which is green in summer and it turns shade of pink in the autumn. And we have Acer palmatum ryusen, which is over there. It has a fantastic orange color at the moment. In summer it's lime green, not particularly eye-catching, but at the moment it looks great. I love acers because they have year-round interest. They're just very nice trees. Acers provide color year-round. The color of an acer in spring is not the same as the color of an acer in summer or in autumn. And even when they drop their leaf, they have fantastic shape. So this is Acer palmatum ukon over there. It's been in the ground for about 15 years. I bought it about half the size it is now, just about fitted in the car. It's a classic acer shape, so this is what a well-pruned acer should look like, though this is a bit dense on the top, so it's due pruning this winter. It starts lime green, turns to mid-green, like it is now in the summer, and it's bright yellow in the autumn, a bit like this. It's the last acer in the garden to turn to its autumn color, so it won't turn till the end of November. Japanese acers come in 3 groups. Acer palmatum, which has the most varieties and also the most varied in leaf shape. Acer japonicum, of which there aren't very many varieties. And Acer shirasavanum, which again doesn't have too many varieties. This is Acer japonicum aquinitifolium in its autumn color. It starts off green, and its autumn color is very spectacular orange and red. It's beautiful. And as opposed to the palmatums, which have 5 lobes, this one has, well, 7 or even 9. It's a very easy to grow acer. It has naturally an open habit, so it wouldn't need to be pruned particularly. And it has great autumn color. I do love pruning. Pruning is an art. And shaping a tree is an art, and acers lend themselves very well to that. This is Acer palmatum katsura. It's a very fast-growing acer, as you can see from these wispy bits that come out. So it has to be pruned a few times a year to look nice. This part of the tree is quite dense here, and of course there's all the wispy bits that need to go. So I'll be thinning a few medium-sized branches in this area. Most people don't prune trees. However, when you look at trees in Japan, everything is pruned to make it look its best, and the trees don't suffer for it. You want to see a trunk. If it's dense, it's just a blob, and the branches inside would die. It just makes it a much more attractive looking tree when you can see its main structure. I don't like a blob. Some people might, I don't. Most of the acers are in pots simply because of space considerations. They could all grow in the ground, but I have to consider the space. How do you care for an acer? If it's in a pot, it would need regular watering, doesn't need much feeding. And if I wanted to stay in the same pot, it would need the roots pruning every few years. You take the plant out the pot and you shave about, I don't know, an inch on each side with a saw, like that, and maybe an inch from the bottom, and repot it with some fresh mix. That has to be done in winter, unless there's absolutely no choice, like a pot breaks or something like that. It's a bit of a myth that acers like acidic soil. They don't, actually. They can grow in most soils, except for really chalky. In terms of positioning acers, most acers can grow anywhere. Especially the red ones would like to be in the sun. Otherwise, they go a slight green color. But quite a few of the greens also can take full sun. The newer introductions, they're a bit more delicate and some of them quite like shade. Variegated acers, of which there aren't that many, they also like shade. You can always find room for another acer, especially in a pot.
The thing about acers, of course, they look fantastic in autumn. But I think they look at their best just as the leaves are beginning to open out in spring. And they do have an incredible sort of glowing vitality, almost better than any other tree. I wish I could grow them better here at Longmeadow. But what I can grow, and I do grow a lot of, are bulbs. And from the end of January up till the end of May, but certainly the early spring, bulbs are going to give you your best colour and your best feeling of life emerging from the ground. Now, what I'm going to do today is grow some hyacinths. This is a hyacinth called Delft Blue. Blue is actually the rarest colour in the whole plant world, and this is a good blue. Almost all bulbs, other than snowdrops, camasias and fritillaries, need really good drainage. It does make a difference. So if you're planting them in a pot, use a peat-free compost and plenty of grit, and mix them up. Mix them up well. Now, when you put them in a pot, you're going to find that there is a big drainage hole, but your gritty compost is going to fall through that. So you need to add a crock. So choose a crock that is curved, that is not going to block the hole, and just sit it over the top. Fill the pot about half full. Right. Now, the key to planting any bulbs in pots is to cram. So, as long as they're not touching, get in as many as you can. It's worth stressing that there are two types of hyacinth. There are treated hyacinths, and they've been treated to flower extra early, and those you plant half buried in October or even September for Christmas. But these are not treated. These will not flower till spring, so therefore they need to be buried. And like all bulbs, ideally, you plant them at least the bulb's height below the soil. And what I always do with all bulbs in a pot is put some grit on top. If they're left outside, it stops them being pitted and splashed by heavy rain. And finally, it stops, when you water them, it stops the wet compost splashing up onto the petals. Water them, and then they can be kept outside. These are completely hardy. In fact, they need a bit of cold to trigger flowering, but they don't want to get soaked. So ideally, if you've got a suitable place, put them somewhere where they are outside but covered. A cold frame is ideal, under the eaves of a house. If not, you can put them indoors until you start to see shoots appear, and then when there's new growth, they do need light, so you'll need to put them outside. And that's it. Easy peasy. And I have to say that this is one of my favourite jobs. I love planting bulbs outside and in pots in autumn. But even if these are not your favourites, here's some jobs for you this weekend. Although I'm a very keen advocate of making as much leaf mould as possible from fallen leaves, I do brush some underneath hedges. This does two things. First of all, it provides really good cover for wildlife, ranging from small insects to mammals. And also, it acts as a feeding mulch for the hedge itself. Now is a very good time to take hardwood cuttings of roses. You can either cut from a growing plant or use prunings, but either way, take nice, long, straight stems. Subdivide them into pieces about 6 to 9 inches long, and a good tip is to cut the top at an angle and the bottom straight to make sure they're the right way up. Strip the leaves off, and then make a narrow trench, filling the bottom with drainage material like grit, and place the cuttings along its length, burying them to about 3/4 of their depth. Leave them for a year, by which time they should have rooted. If you grow lilies or any other summer bulb in a good terracotta pot, recycle it by repotting the lily in a plastic pot, cutting it back, weeding it, and maybe topping it up with a bit of extra compost. The lilies can then be stored outside in a sheltered place. Meanwhile, wash the pot, and it's ready either to be reused for spring bulbs or protected against the worst of winter weather indoors. It's absolutely the best time to plant tulips. And if you have a long border, like these orchard beds, I like to have a really strong rhythmic presence, rather than having lots of different tulips doing different things. These beds in particular look good if you just have sort of one effect running all the way down both sides. And I've got a new tulip, I've never grown it before. It's called Brown Sugar. And I've chosen it because it has that lovely caramelized orangey color that looks really good in this bed. One little tip that I found out over the years that helps. The thing to do is to mark it out with canes. And so what you have is a metre square. Plant the same amount of bulbs in each square, regardless of what else is in it. And sometimes you have to cram them in, sometimes you can spread them out. No two squares will be alike, but the overall effect will be a big hit without looking regimented. And in this case, it's really easy because these come in packs of 10. So I'm just putting in 10 per square. But we've run out of time for today's program, and this will take me about an hour or so. However, I will see you back here at Longmeadow next week. So until then, bye-bye.